So for my senior project, I organized and went on my first moose hunt. The first and most important part of this hunt was actually planning for the trip. So research-wise, there was a lot to do beforehand. I had never gone winter camping before, so I didn't really know what to expect. I had to make sure I knew what kind of gun to bring, what grain bullet to use, how much would that bullet drop, what the moose behaviors were like in the winter, and how that's different from moose behaviors in the fall, how to identify a male moose and where to aim, and then how to field dress a moose. So next we had to plan for what to pack. You don't want to be stuck in the middle of nowhere at 10 below and not have the right kind of gear. So first we had to pack the right clothing. We needed lots of warm clothes, lots of layers, a lot of extra clothes. If something goes wrong, got to make sure you have a lot of extra gear. Then we need to pack our survival stuff. So this was just your basic survival gear we kept on us at all times. In case something went wrong, we need to be able to survive out in the cold for a night. Then there was stuff for the sleds. This is just stuff to keep the sleds running properly because nothing ever works the way you want it to at 10 below. And then lastly, we needed to make sure we had our hunting gear. This is probably the most important stuff for an actual hunt. We had our guns, obviously, ammo. Then we had our kill kit, which is basically everything you need to harvest a moose while you're out there. So this was all super important stuff. The person with the gun, me, had this at all times. Didn't want to be separated and have someone else have the kill kit and you're just sitting there with a dead moose. So we were hunting in Unit 16B, which is up to the left of Anchorage. We met at Deshka Landing right near Willow the day of the hunt, and then we drove our sleds to the lodge, which is on the Skwetna River. We hunted along the Yetna and Skwetna for the next 2 days. So the day before the trip, me and my uncle went flying, because you can't hunt and fly on the same day, and we were trying to spot some moose up there, see if there were any up there, see if there were any bulls. If so, had they already dropped their antlers. It's hard to tell from the plane, especially if they've already dropped their antlers. But basically we're looking for these big dark blobs, which is a lot harder than it seems when there's a bunch of trees and bushes. But I think we did pretty well. We found a lot of moose up there. We found this one spot. We called it the 2 Cottonwood spot. And there was like 5 moose in this field. You can see 3 in the picture. There's one on the bottom left, bottom right, and then one in between them. And it makes like a little moose triangle. And we figured they'd still be pretty much where they were, because in the winter, moose don't move around a lot. It just takes too much energy. So they sit around and they don't move around. So we thought that'd be a pretty promising spot. So the next day, everyone met at Deshka Landing. We loaded up our stuff and drove to the lodge. It was probably a 2-hour ride from the parking lot to the lodge. That night we got settled in. We had dinner. We decided to let the owners cook us breakfast and dinner, and then we'd provide our own lunch, just so it was less food prep for us. So we had a really delicious like shrimp pasta thing. It was so good. The next morning, we started hunting at around 9:30. The sun rose really late and set really early, so did not leave a lot of hunting time. But we tried to get in as much as we could. And I'm going to let my dad narrate this next part here.
Sun is out. Glenn and Hannah out in the front there. See if we can zoom in a little bit. Going to the 2 Cottonwoods. I hope that's productive because I've been talking a lot about it. What a morning. Oh my goodness. This is incredible. Right there is where we think they are.
A family friend also had a permit, so we hunted together. We decided to go to the Cottonwood spot first, and we thought the moose would still be there. So we drove up to the spot with the sleds as far as we could go. We hiked through the alders the rest of the way, but we didn't see anything. We thought maybe the snow machines had scared them off. So that was a bust, but we moved on, tried to find another spot. The 2 groups split, and as we're riding along the river, we were looking for tracks going from the river into the woods, and then we decided we would try to hike into the woods to follow the tracks, see if we saw anything. We saw 3 moose in the distance, maybe 300 yards away. We shut off the machines and tried hiking up. By the time we got over the hill, they were gone. And so we didn't find anything that day. We got back to the lodge later that night. The other group hadn't gotten back yet. And finally they got back, and they had got a moose. So they'd gutted it, left it whole, and just threw it in the sled, which wasn't the traditional way to do it. Usually you quarter it in the field and skin it, but they just left it whole. But I think it worked pretty well. So the next morning we woke up bright and early, got a nice big gold pan of eggs for breakfast. And we went to another spot we thought would be promising. We saw these two big bulls in a big field right next to the lodge while we were flying. We figured they'd still be there, so we broke out the snowshoes. We were kind of over post holing every time we tried to chase a moose. We hiked around for about an hour. We didn't see anything. And then my uncle flew out the next day, and he saw the two big bulls sitting 50 to 100 yards from where we were. So that was frustrating to hear, but we carried on. We spent the rest of the day snow machining around. We didn't see anything. We saw a lot of fresh tracks from where we'd been before. We saw fresh beds, fresh poop. Didn't see any moose though. So on the last day, as we were heading out to go back home, we saw two moose, and we couldn't tell if they were male or female. So we got a good stalk on them, lined up a shot from about 200 yards away. I was feeling confident, could have taken the shot, but it turns out they're both females. So we headed back. I was able to help with the meat processing of the other moose. They had hung the moose from the ceiling while it was still whole, and then skinned it, quartered it, and then let it thaw from the ceiling for about a day. And then we cut up the meat. Yeah, it was really cool to see how to process a moose. I was grateful to be able to help with that, especially since I didn't get my own moose, so it was cool to see different techniques. Everyone thinks their way is the right way, so I got exposed to a lot of different ways of processing meat and cutting meat. So yeah, that was really fun. So Christmas Day, my dad and uncle are talking, and apparently there's a lot of caribou sightings up near our cabin. And so we were wondering whether or not we should go up and try to get a caribou because we have to do permits for caribou. We went the day after Christmas. A lot of our stuff from the hunt was still packed, so it was pretty easy to get ready for. There was multiple herds all over the lake. We found one herd of about maybe 100 to 150 caribou. And then they split up because I got scared, and I found a big one, and I lined up a shot, and I got my first caribou. So yeah, that was really cool. Wasn't a moose, but things don't always work out the way you think they would. So as I'm field dressing my caribou, my cousin and brother get bored and they want to get their own because we still have one permit. So they drive the sleds away and they try to go get their own, and I'm dealing with mine, and they come back and they're dragging a caribou behind their sled. So we both got caribous that day. So that was really cool. So we got double the meat. And I look a little bit like a psychopath in some of these pictures. I have like blood splattered in my face. Like the first cut I made in the caribou, blood shot up at me. So I've got blood on my arms, blood on my face. I have to wash it off as soon as we get back to the cabin. So next up, we had to process the meat. So we spent the night at the cabin and headed home the next day. We let the meat hang from the ceiling in the game bags, super bloody, by the way. And we started processing the meat. We made some roast, some burger, and then my dad brought a jerky maker, so he used the burger that we grinded up in our commercial grade grinder that we bought from Cabela's. And he made jerky, and that's like a thing they do now. Like my brother and dad and I just make jerky. Yeah, it's a story of me and my two hunts, I guess, not just the moose hunt. Yeah, hope you enjoyed.